Hello everybody, KGB here, and today we are on episode 3 of Wacky Warfare, the show where we discuss all matters of Wacky Warfare throughout history. I'm your host, KGB, General Secretary of the KGB, any of those things, but just KGB will do for short, and this is the show where we discuss all sorts of interesting and wacky warfare and history and all that, like I just said. Although, everything that is after 1873, because for those of you just joining in, history does not exist before 1873, as that's when the first Coors beer was brewed. Today we are discussing the entirety of the Nordic countries. That's right, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. These three countries have such a interesting military history, and it is going to be my pleasure telling you all the things about them. Well, some things about them, not all of them. So, to start this video off, let's go with the simplest one. Let's start with Norway. So, Norway is going to be very interesting because I'm only going to focus on World War II, since that's what I know the most about. So, in World War II, around 1940-ish, the world is kind of stuck in the phony war period, as everyone knows. The French have launched a offensive into Germany called the Saarland Offensive that really doesn't do much in the grand scheme of anything. So, the British, French, and Germans really want to shift it elsewhere, and so they go to Norway. Norway is very interesting because they actually held out longer than France did. I think they held out for like half a year or something like that. A ridiculous amount of time. But the reason why is because you really don't fuck with the Scandinavians. They are very angry kinds of people. Such as when the Blucher tried to enter Ostfjord and got absolutely fucked. Like, I don't think there is enough to go ahead and describe how much that those fortifications ripped apart the Blucher. Those fortifications being 50 years old at that time, and being manned by a mix of conscripts, draftees, basically anyone they could grab, including the cooks from the kitchen. And they ripped apart a modern cruiser. Do you see what I mean? There's also the case of the Kingsguard of Norway, going ahead and staging a beautiful firefight against the Fallschirmjägers as they were evacuating the royal family. This was a textbook firefight. Like, there is no other way to describe it. It is a fantastic action battle where both sides got fire superiority over and over again, but the Norwegians held firm against elite special forces units from the Germans. And eventually they did go ahead and throw back the Germans all the way to Oslo. Then there's the one Norwegian fighter regiment that was flying Gloucester Gladiators at that time that were absolutely just fucking up a lot of the Fallschirmjäger transports. If I'm remembering right, they got something like 20 or 30 kills throughout that operation for being one unit flying outdated equipment against the most modern air force in the world at that time is ridiculous. That is absurd. Even more so when you consider that none of them were killed in combat, because they're just like that. Then, of course, the most overhyped piece of history relating to Norway is the saboteurs that stopped Germany's heavy water production by blowing up the, I don't remember its name. Editing KGB put it here under me. Basically a bunch of Norwegians were trained in Britain, and they went ahead and got sent back to blow up the heavy water inside this plant and sink the ships that were carrying it, so that way they could stop the Germans' atomic weapons program. In reality, they were just building a nuclear reactor to go ahead and try and make power. It wasn't a nuclear program for the military, it was a civilian project. But of course, every single documentary or book doesn't really care about that because it isn't as cool as trying to go ahead and say that the Nazis would have nukes by 1944 or something like that, and that they can nuke America or some stupid shit like that. I don't fucking know. All of them are such fucking morons, and I want to beat them to death with the blunt end of an axe. Anyway. So now we will move on to the next two countries. We will go ahead and move on to Sweden and Finland. So, allow me to give some context onto those.
Hello everyone, my name is Ivan. I am KGB's assistant. I'm one of his friends. I run the official Russian Ministry of Defense account here on YouTube. And he wants me to talk to you about the political and the economic stuff around why the Soviets wanted to attack Finland and later on Sweden. The answer is no reason. They really just wanted the stuff in Finland and Sweden. That's really it. Finland had a lot of nickel mines, and the Karelian Isthmus had a lot of strategic benefits. They really just wanted more land, more people to shoot, and so much of that. And also because the Finnish arms industry was actually really good, they wanted some of that good shit too. I mean, Latte 20mm anti-tank rifles beat the shit out of PTRS-41 and PTRD. So that is really the case. Of course, as we all know in history, the Soviets get absolutely bitch-slapped in the Winter War. And then, if they went to war with Sweden later on, they would also get 100% bitch-slapped. Then, because Sweden was planning on making everything from the border with Russia to Stockholm absolutely and utterly uninhabitable if it meant if they needed to. I mean, just look on how Sweden reacted during the Whiskey on the Rocks incident, which I'm pretty sure KGB will talk about later. Anyway, that is my segment done. Enjoy the rest of the video. Cheers.
Thanks, Ivan. So, Sweden and Finland, we're going to start with Sweden, because Sweden, like you went ahead and said, had a significant lack of chill. Despite remaining completely neutral throughout World War II, they really were not ones to be messed with. The Swedes had very good tanks at that time, a very professional military with very good rifles. It's reported from Finland that during like sniper trials and all that, like sniper testing where they would, train against each other and compete to see who was the best sniper, they had to ban the Swedish Mauser rifles because they were just too fucking accurate. So, that goes ahead and says quite a bit about what the Swedes could do. Plus, they were made by Husqvarna. Yes, that Husqvarna, the ones that made your lawnmower. The other important thing to know is that after World War II, sorry, I'm getting too ahead of myself. The other thing is the Swedish Navy's ridiculous coastal defense ships. Like, those things are about as heavily armed as a fucking battleship, and there's a reason for that. Their entire mission is to break open the lines, shoot everything, and then sneak back into an archipelago or a fjord. And it was that Germany didn't go ahead and consider invading Sweden, because their military was just that insane that it would just not be worth it in the long run, even if they went ahead and staged from Norway. And that really goes ahead and continues on into the Cold War era, because the Swedes were going to solo the Soviet Union if they invaded. That's right. They were going to use guerrilla warfare to kill all of the Soviets. That's why they have tanks like the STRV-103 or the IKV-91. They weren't planning on waging a conventional war. It was a military based entirely around guerrilla warfare. And they were going to make it so that every single man, woman, and child were entitled to the country's defense, and they were going to make sure that the ground was going to be wet with all of the blood from every single one of the invaders that crossed over. That's why things like the STRV-103 have all those fuel cans on the side of it. These are meant to stay in the field for literal weeks on end, just ambushing tanks over and over and over again. That's why the Swedes have such good rifle. That's why they use like stuff like the G3 or later on the AK-4. They were just planning on going crazy on these guys. Their aircraft. Sorry, I'm not exactly. I'm trying to get this done quick. The aircraft. Oh God, the aircraft. Saab made some bangers. They were cranking bangers back in the day, and they are still cranking bangers now. The Draken, the Griffin, the Viggen, the many others that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but those three are like the big ones. The one that literally made the Cobra maneuver before it was called the Cobra maneuver. Like, Sweden went ahead and just casually made this thing that could do something that most modern planes can't about like 20 years before the thing got even named, and just went with it. And plus these things can take off from highways because they're just like that. Like, come on. If Russia, even in the modern day, even the Soviet Union at its height, were to invade Sweden, the amount of shit that they would have to fucking deal with would be ridiculous. And just so you know, war with Sweden and the Soviet Union almost happened. The Whiskey on the Rocks incident, in the late 80s era, when a Soviet submarine carrying nuclear torpedoes got stuck on a Swedish island, and the Soviets were getting all insane. The Swedish literally almost sunk the small flotilla of the Soviet Navy that were coming to pick up their sub. Like, aircraft were in the air armed with anti-ship missiles ready to go. They were 2 minutes apart. That's how much time there was between combat before the Soviets finally turned around. Sweden had a staring contest with the fucking Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union blinked. I just think I need to go ahead and say it, because that is fucking baller. Anyway, let's move on to the final one. You all know what it is.
Sinnettä matkalla politiikana. Molotowin lupasi on kaikki harpsi. Huomenna jo Helsingissä syödään marski.